Hi, our guest today is Scott Harrison, a member of the Milford School Committee. My co-host Al Holman is not here today. Scott, welcome. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Scott, I asked you to come here to give us your opinion, not the full school committee's, but your opinion about the new holiday policy that the school committee recently, they sort of modified one from a year ago, if I'm right. And the reason I asked you here is I think you were a key player in getting this modified. But my understanding is the initial daily news coverage of it didn't get it exactly right what transpired. So can you or can you not celebrate Christmas in the Milford school system?
So great question. So you've always been able to celebrate Christmas,
Right.
And all of the holidays. This was really, at its core, really came down to what was able to be decorated for and what decorations were acceptable and what were not.
Right. And religious symbols are not.
Correct. So
unless you're teaching about them.
Right. So, and that's actually consistent with most public schools throughout the entire country.
Okay.
And that comes down to really sort of a conversation around separation of church and state. So it comes down to things such as, I can't hang a crucifix on the wall.
Right.
And just have it up as a normal decoration in the classroom. I can't have a Star of David on the wall as part of my normal decoration. It needs to be, those would be the religious symbols that we're talking about.
Now, can a teacher wear a crucifix around his or her neck?
Absolutely, and that was one of the things that we actually adjusted and amended as a result of this policy, was that really comes into freedom of expression.
Right.
And the original draft of the policy only addressed freedom of expression for students.
Right, so if a teacher wants to wear a Star of David necklace because she's Jewish, that's okay.
Absolutely. Yep. Whether they're Jewish or not, whether the teacher's Jewish or not, they can wear whatever religious symbols on their person that they want. That's part of their freedom of expression.
Okay.
Same with holiday sweaters. Same with if they want to wear a sweatshirt that has a manger scene on it. Absolutely perfectly acceptable because it's part of freedom of expression.
Okay, but the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that certain things are not religious symbols, such as an elf, Santa Claus, a candy cane, even a tree.
Right, so a Christmas tree was ruled by the Supreme Court, and that was part of the conversation that went along with all of this.
Right.
The original coverage that was done in the newspaper, unfortunately, was a little off from what was actually adjusted.
It made me feel that Christmas was outlawed.
Yeah, so that's absolutely not the case. What really occurred was this, and this is really the way that the policy, there's really sort of two halves of the policy.
Right.
It's a two-page policy. One of our shorter policies, as it turns out.
Okay.
So the first page really just talks about the fact that students are basically going to be held harmless for missing anything relating to school for religious observance. So if they are not able to turn in a homework assignment, if they are not able to attend practice for extracurricular activities, anything of that nature, they're held harmless. If they have to miss school for religious observance, all of those different pieces, they're held harmless for. That's really that's page one, if you will. Page two is where it gets into some of these other pieces that you're talking about. And really the debate was really over item 5. And I would tell you, that's exactly what it was.
And item 5 is?
Item 5 was holiday decorations. And the original language talked about holiday decorations in the form of religious holiday decorations.
Right.
Where it was ambiguous, in my opinion, was that it addressed it as holiday decorations that were religious in nature. Okay, that's fine. However, the conversation with the board was then, okay, well, what constitutes a holiday decoration? And where the debate came up was, well, a Christmas tree is considered a religious holiday decoration.
No, it's not.
Well, no, it's not. The United States Supreme Court ruled already chimed in on that because it's been already been a context of
unless you count paganism as a religion.
Right.
Since it's a pagan symbol from the Germanic tribes of the like 5th or 6th century.
Right, and it really ultimately what the United States Supreme Court ruled was that the Christmas tree, as a very specific example,
Right.
had nothing to do with the religious aspects of Christmas.
Right.
In the same context, they actually ruled that the menorah actually fell into both categories. It was both religious and secular and non-secular at the same time. I don't know how only the United States Supreme Court can rule like that, but that's how they ruled. So we as a school committee ultimately said, listen, since it's been ruled as both, we're going to view that as being as not being a religious symbol. So absolutely, that's been allowed. And what we really did was we kept and limited the policy, really focusing on sort of the legal aspects of religious symbols.
Okay.
And
So if a teacher wants to put up a picture of Santa Claus, they can.
Absolutely. Yep. So what we then did was we asked Kevin, Dr. McIntyre at the
Right.
superintendent of schools, to really give some clarity. One of the things that I had asked was, last year around this time, there was a lot of confusion. There was confusion by
Yes.
teachers, there was confusion by all faculty, by many members of the faculty and staff.
And a lot of things were stopped.
Yes, we had decorations being pulled out of classrooms. We had teachers calling me and asking me, can I wear, I wear a Santa Claus sweater every year. Am I not allowed to wear that now? So the teachers, what I had asked was, can we go back? Can we poll the teachers? Can we talk with them? Can we ask them what they're looking for, what they'd like to see, what their confusion is, so that we can make sure that we get this right?
Okay.
Kevin went back. We did some listening meetings, and really got the consensus back from the teachers, because there were some strong opinions. We had one of our cafeteria workers in the high school getting students to sign a petition to bring Christmas decorations back to the school, and that's clearly, certainly, I certainly, my hat off to them for doing it.
But a year ago, they were banned.
Yes, that was the way it was. That was the way that it was being done. So we went back, we revisited this. I had asked that we continue to go back at this, and we need to give these teachers some level of clarity. So in addition to amending the policy to remove the religious decorations component,
Right.
And holiday decorations component of it, because though the conversation was, and all the air was sucked up in the room talking about Christmas decorations,
Right.
the policy actually said holiday religious decorations. Okay, well, St. Valentine's Day
Is a religious
is a
holiday.
religious holiday. St. Patrick's Day
Yep.
is a religious holiday. I don't think that anybody that I've ever been made aware of draws offense or takes offense to someone having a picture of a shamrock in a classroom on around the 17th of March every year, but that actually would fall under the guidelines of the way the policy had been written.
Right.
That being said, in addition to changing the policy, Kevin also then is sending communication out to the teachers that really gives that clarity of, yes, holiday decorations such as Christmas trees are allowed in classrooms. You want to have a menorah in the classroom? Absolutely.
You can have a pumpkin at
You want to have a
Halloween.
pumpkin at Halloween? You can have that. If you want to have a
Can you have a
shamrock,
Halloween party?
so
Or
Halloween
parade?
parties are a little different.
Okay.
That really, when it comes to, specifically, I'm assuming that you're talking about the Horribles parade.
Yes.
Okay, so that's actually at the discretion of the principals, and ultimately falls under the superintendent of schools.
Okay.
That's not actually addressed in these policies at all, because this is relating to religious decorations.
And a pumpkin's not a religious
And a
decoration.
pumpkin's not a religious decoration, so.
Nor is somebody dressed as Darth Vader.
Correct, you got it.
Although some might claim that that is a religious.
Some may argue that, yes, as well.
Well, whatever. Okay. So it took a year to get this
Yes.
together and get it right. And what was the vote of the school committee?
So ultimately, the vote was unanimous. It was a unanimous vote by all members that were present. We had 6 out of 7 members, and unfortunately, there was a conflict in scheduling for one of our members who was attending another meeting that he has an obligation for.
Right.
But it was a unanimous vote in favor of removing the holiday decoration language, the religious holiday decoration language, and strictly limiting it to religious items and limiting it to more of the legal aspects.
Okay. So it's safe
rather
to
than the
say
secular.
Christmas is back in the classroom.
Yes, and if you want to sum it up that way, absolutely.
Okay. Well, you
Yep.
know, there was a lot of confusion,
There was.
a lot of bad feelings a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
that basically a small minority was banning Christmas.
Yeah, and that was, I think that was part of the conversation, and it's not that we don't want to give, attention to and listen to and make sure that all students feel comfortable. That was one of the questions that I had asked of Dr. McIntyre at the time was, how many complaints are we talking about here? And he said, less than 10. And I said, okay, so as a school committee, we're creating a policy that impacts roughly 4,300 students based off of complaints of less than 10. And when we got down to it and really started to peel the onion back a little bit, it really came down to communication.
Right.
That and what I would tell you is in 20 years of my professional life and now 6 years of being on the school committee, more often than not, the core of any challenge or issue that you're dealing with comes down to communication.
Okay. Does this mean that you can have Elf on the Shelf back on the shelf?
So that one was very specifically called out as a no. That was one that not banned by the school committee. That's one that at the direction of the superintendent's asked not to be in theirs, very specifically.
Why?
That's a great question.
I realize there was one person who complained about it.
Yep.
How can an elf sitting on a shelf cause an issue?
Well, this is where it comes down to the communication piece, where that's
Okay.
one particular item. It was actually being used in some cases as a behavior modification tool. It's very
Okay.
specifically related to one holiday versus another, which I get. It's not the religious aspect. It's the
Okay.
That's where it comes back to. It was being used as and to be honest with you, I mean, I certainly, my hat off to that school teacher for being very creative in a way to keep students focused on what's going on in the classroom educationally, in a time where, candidly, it's very, very difficult. I've worked in classrooms in Milford Public Schools. As you and I have talked about before, I have family members. Both my parents are retired Milford school teachers. My sister's a current Milford school teacher. I think the expression is it's like herding
I
cats.
have nieces and nephews who were school teachers.
Yeah, and it's like herding cats around this time of year. As the holidays start to come along and Target starts to explode with holiday decorations, it's really, really difficult to keep kids focused, and I get that. So my hat off to the creativity of the teacher.
Well,
They came back and said, you know what, this was where the concern was. That was sort of at the core of the issue. Can we address this? Can we find other ways to use behavior modification to be able to do that? Yes, great. Let's remove the elf on the shelf because it is focused really around one more holiday than the other. Okay, great, we can do that.
Okay. So that one's done. Just, it's Christmas time and we wanted to, I should say it's holiday time and being all-inclusive because I celebrate Festivus.
Yeah, okay,
And,
Festivus for the rest of us. I love it.
Oh, I love the airing of the grievances.
There you go.
Which basically is any family dinner.
I think in almost every household.
No, I'm joking. I just like the idea of an alternative holiday.
Yeah.
But, okay, now let me ask you one from left field. Again, your opinion. If you can't have religious symbols, why is Stacy being rented out to a church?
Good question. So, really it's two different things. So you can have religious symbols in a classroom.
Yeah.
As part of the Milford School curriculum.
Correct.
And attached to a lesson plan that had educational purposes to it. You absolutely can. You can put up, if you want to do a comparative religions lesson as part of the curriculum in the class, and you want to put up crucifixes and Star of Davids and any other religious item and symbols of Buddha or any others, you can absolutely have those in a classroom as related to the lesson.
Okay.
Let's go back to the church question, which is really where you're going at it. So here's the thing, they're a non-for-profit. And actually, that's a policy that we are in the process right now. The policy committee, of which I am a member,
Right.
is taking that back under review to how do we address the policy that are out there, because there's really two things. One, they're a non-for-profit. Our buildings are for rent. This is not it's not saying that we are supporting of those groups. It's certainly not saying that we're pushing, we're encouraging. It has nothing to do with our students. It's actually done on Sundays. It's when there's no other, there's no students in our schools for that point, other than the ones that may be attending this event. Not anything that we're supporting. They've rented the space. In this case, this is where we are in the rental business for that respect.
And you'd probably get sued if you turn them down.
Yeah, well, there's ways. One of the things that that we are looking at going and addressing this, and part of what my opinion is on this is, I think the way the policy is currently written there's no approval process for rentals. So what happens is this: if you wanted to go in and rent the building,
It's automatically approved.
there is no approval. You go in and you just fill out the information, and as long as you follow our rules, you're fine. There's no approval or disapproval. There's no as part of the current policy. The way that the policy was written from a cost perspective is, when we originally wrote the policy, was we wanted to be able to rent the facilities for non-for-profit groups. There were two that were very commonly renting it.
Probably the Scouts.
Nope, the Scouts was actually not one of them.
Okay.
The two most common ones that were renting facilities for the schools was the Cancer Walk that happens every May,
Right,
the overnight,
right.
and Special Olympics. We wanted to be able to give those groups, allow those groups to be able to use it and not have them eat away their contributions from the donors
Right.
into paying for the public schools. We felt that it just didn't feel right. So we did that. Well, the challenge is other groups have figured out, hey, listen, I'm a non-for-profit, I'm a charitable organization, I'm an authorized 501c3. Oh, I can go to Milford. In fact, actually, the church group you're referencing is actually not even from the area; they're from the Attleboro area. But they found that we'll actually rent that they can save themselves some money. So we're looking to address that policy. That's something that's being taken into, again, good intention. As a friend of mine who's an attorney will say, nothing's a problem until it's a problem.
Well, what
This
you
is-
find,
wasn't a
well, you
problem
find
for
it,
years.
you
and now it's a
find
problem.
is you pass a policy, you said, with the intended use of the Cancer Walk and the special athletes, and somebody looks at it, 10 years later and says, hey, that would let me do this.
Yes.
And they do it.
Yep. And I would tell you very specifically the field use for Milford High School. That policy was written. I was on the policy subcommittee when I first joined the school committee 6 years ago that drafted that policy. That's when I came into office, and that was the initial intent. And we wanted all of our rental use policies to be similar.
Well, speaking of your term in office, you've decided not to run for third three-year term, correct?
That is correct. I have made the decision, along with my family, to decided not to continue on and run for re-election in the spring election.
Why?
Well, there's a couple reasons. One, I'm somebody who's feels very strongly about, I have a self-imposed term limit person.
So 6 years was it?
6 years is, I've done 2 terms. If it was, if 2 terms was good enough for George Washington, it should be good enough for me.
Okay.
There's always a list of things to get done. That list never goes away. But I felt as though I've given my contributions to the school committee. Certainly wouldn't say that I've been far from a perfect member. I don't think there's such a thing. But I think it's time for me to move on to do, find other ways that I can continue to give back to the town.
Now,
That's given me
does
so
that
much.
mean you're going to run for another elected office?
So great question. I don't have any intentions of running for the April 2018 election. At some point, I certainly do. At some point, I would certainly could see myself running for a Board of Selectmen seat at some point in the future. Absolutely.
Okay.
But no intentions for 2018. Just to be very, very clear, I will not be running for April of 2018. But in the future, absolutely, I could see myself doing that. In the meantime, my intention is to fill out a talent pool form and look to contribute and give back to the town in other ways.
Okay. Let's look back on your 6 years. What do you think you're part of a larger group, but is there anything that stands out that you feel you especially contributed to over these 5 3/4 years on the school committee? I mean, things that you feel you own or a significant contributor to.
Yeah, I think there's, and to your point, I'm certainly not alone. It's a 7-member board.
Right.
There's some things that I'm particularly proud
But
of.
let me interrupt and just say, to be candid though, there are some things where you think of a certain member of a certain board, you identify something with them. You say like, Brian Murray on the Board of Selectmen, very big on certain building projects. So, his title was selectman, but you identify and say, well, Brian helped, the youth center done, the community fields project, other things.
Mhm.
Are there things that, you feel that people would say, oh, Scott Harrison, yeah, he did X?
Yeah, so I really think there's a few things. I hope, obviously, that they're positive things, and there are things that I hope that people would identify with my time that I've served in the school committee. First and foremost, when I first ran for the school committee, one of the reasons why I ran initially was to help bring the Woodland project to fruition and to a reality. And though it's certainly open and it's beautiful and it's gorgeous and it's been a Herculean effort by so many people, Woodland was a distant dream 6 years ago. We'd not received approval from the state. We were still just on the wait list, as we had been for the previous 10 years. And one of the things that I was looking to do was to help bring that into fruition. And I would like to, it's certainly one of the things that I'm very proud of being a part of, was seeing that project going through, working with town meeting, helping see that through to getting even just the money allocated for the feasibility study. That's a big piece that I feel, and I hope that people identify with my term. I think one of the things, and it's something that I feel really proud of, and I hang my hat on. It's not one particular vote or a policy or a procedure, but being the voice of the teachers, helping be one of the voices of the teachers and of the students. As we talked about, and I talked about earlier, I take very seriously the fact that I come from a family of teachers. And it's not just my parents, and it's not just my sister. I have cousins that teach in the embassy schools in Chennai, India. My aunt's a retired special ed teacher from upstate New York. My cousin's is a gym teacher in New York City.
So how'd you wind up in finance?
Right. I've the black sheep of the family, I guess, right? So, one of the things that I love about Milford is Milford has so many family businesses. Yeah. My family business is education. This is the way that I've been able to be involved in my family business for the past 6 years. Okay. So I think being that voice and being somebody who's listens to the teachers, and not to say that I'm the only one, but being that voice of the teachers is something that I hold very dear in my heart and hope. Another piece that I would say is, really thinking back, our ELO program was in its infantile stages 6 years ago when I first came in. It's a massively growing population, and I know it's a subject of debate.
Not just in Milford, though. In fact, the state legislature just passed some legislation on it. This is the largest growing group of students across the state, if not the country. And
it was a very big challenge to, special education has been growing massively in Milford as well as across the country for years. ELL became this massively growing population. We had a program, but it was still small, still very developing. In my time as chairman, that was during a time when working to get additional funding, working with at that point Representative Fernandez and now Senator Fatman, talking through with them, helping and understand what the state budget process looks like, and really helping to develop that program to a point now where, when we have ELL students that come into any town in Massachusetts, we are obligated by law and by statute to educate them. We need to be able to give the resources to our students and to our teachers, and I feel really strongly that, during my time in the school committee, and very specifically my time as chair, we helped do that. We helped to do that.
I specifically remember Al Crier of the finance committee standing up and going, "These are Milford children."
Mm-hmm. They're Milford kids, just like everyone else.
Right.
And we need to educate them just as we do every other Milford child. And we need to be able to give our teachers the support to do that. And I don't feel as though we necessarily were.
Do you feel they are now?
I think we're definitely well down the road of being able to do that. There's no such thing as enough. Right. There's no such thing as, if you ask any teacher out there, they always have a wish list of things that they could have. Right. When you're dealing with municipal financing, it's not a limitless fund. True. But it's a trade-off and a compromise.
And I think, although I don't normally cover the school committee, I've grown to know you over the last year as we debated this holiday issue and discussed it quite frequently. Yes. So I think you're identified with sort of a voice of reason or moderation on that issue. As people were going one way, you're like, bringing them back.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I hope so. You know, that I would certainly say that that's something that I feel really good about in more recent terms of kind of helping bring this back into a more centered thought process.
Yeah, and I think it is. Any other things that you're particularly care about, or how about going forward? What are the issues facing your soon-to-be ex-colleagues
Right.
on the
Well,
board?
you're right. They're, the budget is always an issue, right? It's always something that's work that's never done. The moment we that we put pen to paper and the ink dries on the budget, and it's submitted and approved, we pick up the next sheet. We pick up another blank piece of paper and start again. So the budget is always an ongoing piece. Some things to face. We have a high school that's going to need some more renovation. It's older than I am at this point.
Goes back to the 70s, I think.
It goes back to the 70s, as do I, by the way. But it goes back to the very early 70s. I believe it was 71 or 72 when that building first came to being. The roof is going to need to be done in the next 5 to 7 years. That's a very expensive project. That's about a $5 million project.
And that was a lawsuit from the day the school was built.
So there's
getting the roof in the right way.
Yeah, so the facilities piece, right? So there's always the next facilities program. So I think doing some renovations on the high school, I think that's one. I think two, we're getting ready to go through a teacher contract negotiation. So that's always an exciting and energetic time.
Yep.
I also think not just the facilities piece, but we're still building out a long-range educational plan. I think one of the things that we're really facing right now is this, and this is no secret. I'm not speaking outside of school here. We have a high school that's currently a level 3 high school, and for those who don't know, that there's different levels, and I know you're aware of this, but there's different levels of gradation for schools that are out there, and they're 1 through 5, and we're at a 3 right now. So it's not the danger zone. We're not at risk of any of those things.
Is 5 the best or 1 the best?
1 is the best, 5 is the worst.
So you're in the
right
middle.
in the middle, right? Well, we don't like being in the middle, right? I don't like being in the middle. People don't send their students to Milford schools to be average. They send them to be exceptional, which I believe that our students are.
Right.
So we want to continue to move that along. You asked about other things that I'm proud of. Smooth transition. We have transitioned over the last 24 months here with very limited exception. Every member of central office. Kathy Perry is our longest-standing person. New superintendent of schools, new assistant superintendent of schools, new special ed director.
Well, you actually had a new assistant superintendent first, then a
Yes.
new superintendent, and then the assistant became, then you got another new one.
Correct. So we've actually gone through two assistant superintendent of schools,
Right.
a superintendent of schools. We created an ELL director position,
Right.
held by Jen. I always want to call her Lancaster, but it's Narjanian because she did get married last year. And a new special ed director that's come in with Lucy Jenkins, who's doing a phenomenal job. So we've gone through a lot of transition. We've also had a new high school principal, a new Shining Star director, new principal at Woodland. We've opened up this beautiful school. We've added to that group as well. So those are some things that I'm proud of. But yes, those are some of the things that I would say our current school committee and going forward really have to face. Facilities, obviously always the teachers, budgets, and then that long-range education plan and moving the high school along this continuum here. How do we get from a 3 to a 2? How do we move from a 2 to a 1?
Right.
And we've got some stiff competition out there. I mean, Massachusetts, in our last report that we saw out there, if Massachusetts was its own separate country, we would be in the top 20 in education in the world.
Well, the state is actually #1 in the country.
And
Most people don't realize that.
Massachusetts is #1 in the country in the United States, and we look even much more globally than that. Great. If we go around the world, where are we? Well, we're in the top 20 in the world in education if we were our own standalone country. So the bar is set very, very high. We're not,
Right.
When we talk about being a level 3 high school, putting it in context of, we're a long way from, states where, some of our other
You're not Texas.
are some of our other states out there that, and actually not even Texas. You've got South Carolina, Arkansas, Alabama, and Florida are usually some of your bottom ranking states.
Okay.
We're not in that position. So.